Hello and welcome to the All Blaze No Glory podcast, to a familiar voice and face, Kenney Collins, who's been on the YouTube chat. How are you doing, Kenney?
Very well, Rambo. How are you?
I'm doing well. Now, this will confuse...
Congratulations on getting the actual podcast up and running. Nice wee wedding present. Nice.
Yeah. Well, and incidentally, I didn't realise, I think I did actually manage to put our one out as a podcast before on, but it was only on Podbean, so it wasn't on anything else.
Oh, nice.
But I'm now on Acast, and a wedding present from my lovely wife was to buy me a subscription, presumably to keep me out of her hair for extended periods of time.
It's a win-win for everyone.
It's a win-win for everyone. So thanks for coming on, Kenney. We're going to talk some NFL. Now, for anyone who's new to the podcast or All Blaze No Glory, Kenney's calling me Rambo. Don't be alarmed. It's not a new person with the exact same voice. I have several monikers. Rambo is my ice hockey moniker normally. That's why you'll hear certain people who come on as guests calling me that. Kenney, it's been a lot of newsworthy things going on in the NFL recently. And have you been keeping track of that in the preseason so far, or are you just waiting for the season to start?
I have dipped in about the past 3 weeks. I took a bit of a break from the news frenzy and all the kind of the off-season stuff, and I've just the past couple of weeks started to immerse myself back into it with the headlines and the movements. So it's been all go this season or off season. Yeah,
it certainly has. Now, obviously, I think one of the biggest news articles of the off season, or things that didn't seem like it was ever going to go away, was the Deshaun Watson saga. First, it was where is he going to end up getting traded to, and then second, was he going to get suspended? How much was he going to get suspended? What's your thoughts on the Deshaun Watson situation?
Well, I mean, I don't want to get into the legality of it. I think that's kind of run its course. From a legal point of view, decisions have been made, and we need to respect those decisions, whether we feel that they're right or wrong. I don't necessarily think me, one random guy from Fife, my opinion really counts towards it. So I'll leave that off the pod. But obviously it was down to a civil case, which is now being settled with the NFL, and a trade happened. It wasn't where I felt that he wasn't going to go to one of the, and people will hate me for this, but one of the major clubs. It would need to be somebody that was either desperate for a quarterback, that was willing to take the potential media hit on it, or somebody that was just growing and was actually looking for some media attention and potentially using that storyline to piggyback off it. Now, obviously, he went to the Browns, which didn't surprise me at all. It was going to be one of maybe 3 or 4 clubs that fitted the bill for that, and the Browns was a definite landing spot for him. Now, obviously, that caused a little bit of controversy with Baker Mayfield as well, and we can get into that in a little bit if you want. I thought the club that he was going to as well was going to have to know that something league-wide, from a league point of view rather than a legal point of view, was going to come from it. And I think it was decided that it was going to be 2 games with no fine, which then went to an arbitration and has now been increased to 11 games and a $5 million fine.
That's right. It was.
Forgive me if I'm wrong on those figures.
Slightly wrong. I'm not entirely sure at what stage, but there was a judge, Judge Sue Robinson, might be the only American judge I know the name of, because she handed down a 6-game suspension, which a lot of people thought was with no fine, and quoting a lot of his conduct if you will, was non-violent. And then she said that the NFL has to be careful because they're not looking at precedent; they're basically looking at their own feelings on Deshaun Watson. And then the NFL have a strange appeals process where essentially Goodell or one of his nominees can decide how best to do it. And I think they came down on some kind of middle ground because the league wanted him to be indefinitely suspended, but at least a year. And I think they've sort of agreed to settle. And my thoughts on it settling are, if you suspend him for a year, he's probably going to drag this out in federal court. Whereas if you kind of get a middle ground, and I think they actually settled on this before the appeal hearing, and give him 11 games, as much as it doesn't, it leaves a bitter taste in a lot of people's mouths, and it leaves a bitter taste in my mouth because I feel really uneasy about what he's done, and not just what he's done, but how he's reacted to what he's done, because he seems to be belittling that type of conduct. Whether you accept he's definitely done it or not, it's the way he's reacted to it. He's not tried to come out ahead of this. He's just tried to basically
sweep under the
carpet and essentially downplay that type of behaviour, which is the bit that makes me feel the most uneasy. But I think the league have taken a pragmatic view on it, and essentially their lawyers have probably said, look, do this and it'll stop it, it'll make it go away, or make the narrative go away. And I think that's
going back to the sweeping under the carpet analogy. I feel it's the league that are now doing that, as opposed to Deshaun Watson are doing that. The league have got saying, look, we've got what we can out of him. Now let's make it go away.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway,
just one quick question on that, Rambo. The fine. It's $5 million when he's just signed a $230 million contract. That is not even a pebble in the ocean.
Well,
what's your feelings on the point of it? If it was just a straight 11 games with no fine, right? Okay. If it was 11 games with $50 million, I could see that. What's the point in the $5 million? I just don't see it.
I don't know, but it's the same with, I think there's probably some kind of maximum fine in terms of their collective bargaining agreement, in much the same way as the NHL have got some ridiculously low fine for, you remember
a $5,000 fine for a boarding call, was it, or a hit from behind?
It was the one where like Ovi speared someone in the nuts, and
that was it.
Yeah, and he got like a $5,000 fine, which is, I mean, I know this sounds thingy, but that's not even, a couple of months' wages for us, and we're not mega millionaires. So, and I'm not downplaying it. It would hurt like hell if we got a $5,000 fine, but for someone like Ovechkin, what's the point in it, as you say?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
And with I suppose with Deshaun Watson, $5 million is not a lot of money to him necessarily in terms of his contract, but $5 million might be a lot to people that the NHL, the NFL may have to support or settle with because
later in life, like further down the road.
I suppose in a way, it's a pragmatic approach. If he got 50 million, if it was 50 million, they would have found themselves in federal court. There's 5 million. Well, we've got 5 million. We've drawn a line on the sand now, and essentially we're not going to end up in federal court arguing over this for months on end. I used to be a bit of a Browns fanboy. I'm a Rams fan, but you would know I was quite soft in the Browns right now. But before, I can't bring myself to want them to do well.
Absolutely not.
And I feel bad because I quite like Stefanski as a coach, and even as problematic as he's been, Myles Garrett's he's a great player, and Nick Chubb is one of the best running backs in the league, but I just can't bring myself to root for that team anymore. So
I'm kind of the same with like if you're looking at just quickly that dipping into the Browns and who they've got. I quite like Kareem Hunt, I like a storyline with Jacoby Brissett, and I think without going into too many details, you'll know why from the podcast that we listen to. Mm-hmm. I'd love them, I'd love that team to do well, but from a front office and back management point of view, I get why a certain Mark Sessler has just gone, nah, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because I kind of feel the same.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to be all doom and gloom on this, but
absolutely not. No.
I guess the final point I would say, and the best outcome for this season in terms of as NFL fans is, well, for me, who's had a bit of a soft spot for the Browns, we're kind of my second or third team, but the best best outcome for me is that if they are going to light it up this year, Jacoby Brissett lights it up and Stefanski benches Watson when he becomes eligible to play. But we'll see that when
it happens. But then it also kind of, if that did happen, it would bring to light, well, was Stefanski in the conversation when the trade was happening? Did he ever want him?
I don't think so. I don't think. I think there's been some form of conversation, but I think it's been more a case of you've been told, because
this is happening.
Yeah, as a coach, this is a lose. It's got a very, very small margin for error on his part. If he doesn't light it up with Watson when Watson comes back for a full season, he's fired and potentially a pariah in the league, and that was brought up in the Around the NFL podcast. And if he does win with Watson, people are going to question whether he's just winning because of
Watson. Yeah.
So I don't think he's in a position where he's going to come out of this looking smelling like a bag of roses. But hey ho. Anyway, I think we should move on from Deshaun Watson, because people are probably fed up hearing about it. But I just wanted to get your views since we haven't talked in a while. And I decided to do something a bit different this year, because last year we tried to go round the divisions. It took forever, and we didn't get there. So I figured it's almost fantasy drafting season. It will be probably when this podcast comes out on Monday.
Well, we the league that I'm in, we actually did ours on Sunday past.
Oh, well, that's early, because that's so.
It was convenient for as many people as we could get it. So there wasn't people missing out and having to go into auto picks. So. We've already done ours, so that's
that's fair. You got a keeper league, Kenney?
No, a dynasty league?
Yeah.
No, straight draft every year. I am considering proposing that to the guys and girls that we play with. I think it'll bring a new light to the draft process, as well as just a little bit of fun towards it, seeing what front of house need to do from a keeping people point of view, and it would make trades a lot more interesting rather than just saying, I'll get them next year.
Because trades, you got to think about whether that player is worth, if they've had a bit of a bad season, will they rebound?
Will they bounce back?
Yeah. Also, I'm in one keeper league and one straight draft league, and I quite like the difference of the two.
Yeah.
Because the keeper league is quite good because you can trade trading draft picks means more.
Yeah.
As well to bump up in that, and we had that in the NHL league I was in as well. So I do quite like that, but equally it's quite good to get a clean slate, because you got someone who's been in the league longer than you. They've accumulated more assets, so potentially they're going to have a better team, and those players never become available for you to win your league with. So anyway, that was a little bit of an aside. But first off, I think what we want to talk about is go through the position groups, the main position groups of the fantasy drafts and the fantasy season. Talk about who we think are the players that are going to get you the most points, essentially. Any little sleepers that we may have, or little quirks that we've got, and look at it from that. So it's your quarterback, your running back, your wide receiver, your tight end group, your kicker, and your defense, because no one liked my idea of playing a league with positional players in defense. they hated it. So we're not doing that. We're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, I'd like to do that, but I think it's, for me, the fantasy, I love doing it, genuinely love it. Mm-hmm. But I would still say I'm dipping my toe in the water from an actual, I can talk about the players, I can talk about who they're with, who should be getting points, but when it comes to them actually scoring the points, it doesn't seem necessarily to be my forte, but it doesn't stop me talking about it.
Yeah, and sometimes it's really odd, because I find it odd that sometimes you get like a wide receiver who's really good, but they've got a rubbish quarterback and a rubbish team. So
yes, and there's going to be potentially a lot of that, or flip side of that, where they're not that great or haven't had that, but because of the quarterback moves and a lot of wide receiver moves this offseason, it's spicing things up a little bit, which has made this year's draft, or prospect of draft, if you've not had your draft yet, it makes it really quite interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, let's start with the quarterback position, Kenny. I'm just going to come up right at the gate and tell you, in my keeper league, I have kept Justin Herbert.
I think that's a fair shout.
It's the only person I've kept, actually, because I didn't have a great running back. I kept him the year before. I can't even remember who it is now. That's how not very good they were. But Justin Herbert is for me one of the premier talents. But who have you got? Who would you back in your drafting league? Who is it you sought the most for quarterback?
I mean, if I said to myself, I am not drafting a quarterback before the 5th round this year, because I've done it in the 3rd and the 4th the past couple of years, and I've got a decent quarterback out of it. I mean, I had Aaron Rodgers last year, the year before. I think I had Patrick Mahomes, and then the year before that, I had Russell Wilson. So, oh no, sorry, it wasn't Russell Wilson the year before. Kyler Murray was in there somewhere anyway. So, all good quarterbacks, but I took them 2nd or 3rd round to thinking I'm going to get them. And then I fell off when it came to the wide receivers and the running backs, because they'd all been taken in the 2nd and 3rd rounds, where everybody else was taking their quarterbacks in the 4th or 5th. So I said to myself, I am not drafting a quarterback before I think I drafted them in the 5th. Mm-hmm. For me, QB1, if he's there when you want him, and the emphasis on when you want him, it has to be Josh Allen. I mean, he is almost like quad threat quarterback these days. He can run, he can throw, he can be, he's proven he can catch, and he's big enough that he can block if there's a trick play in there. Now, a lot of people wouldn't want that, obviously, but he's a big enough guy that he can even just bump a guy to make a play. So from a fantasy point of view, obviously that's not going to come into play, but from what we're looking at, he can run, he can throw, so he's going to get, even if he does get a reception, if it's a points per reception league you're playing, there's a potential for more points there. So for me, QB1, definitely Josh Allen. After that, there's a lot of people that are, yep, he's good, he's going to score me a lot of points, but it's all about where do you want to draft your quarterback. You've got Herbert, you've got Mahomes, you've got Murray, you've got Jackson, you've got Jalen Hurts, you've got the potential for Russell Wilson this year as well, on arguably a better team than he was on last year. He's definitely going to have more opportunities to throw the ball, because when we all know his coach last year liked him to throw the ball 12 times a game. So, but then if you're going even deeper into it, you've got Joe Burrow. Yes, he's questionable from an injury point of view. I think something came out, they actually had a ruptured appendix as opposed to just appendicitis. You've got Matthew Stafford coming back from an injury. You've got Jameis Winston being given the reins now. All of those quarterbacks are going to give you points. Is having the quarterback the best thing in a points per reception league? Probably not.
Yeah.
So for me, having a top tier quarterback is a massive bonus, but it's not the be all and end all. And it wasn't for me. Now, in my draft this year, I actually took two quarterbacks, but one of them, and I'm sure somebody will end up listening to this or watching it. I took two, one in the 5th, and I think one so it was a 17 round draft, maybe in the 14th round. I took Rodgers, and then I took Stafford, but I took Stafford as a potential trade. I was trying to play the long game on it. Now, he's not going to do me anything at the moment because he is, he's questionable. They're not sure how he's going to come back. He might be good trade stock. And Rodgers buys not until week 14. So I've got time.
Yeah.
So for me, I went for two. A lot of people were getting the extra receiver, or the extra tight end, or the extra running back. I went for the extra quarterback. You'll need one at some point. You'll need a second quarterback because of a bye week. And it's not a bad one to have, having Stafford.
No. My sleeper for this, and I think people sleep. Well, some people sleep on this. I think Jalen Hurts is one that could really. I mean, last year he was kind of weirdly awful in terms of throwing stats, but great in fantasy because he runs so much.
Yep.
So running quarterbacks, I think, are in a way you get more points for running, and certainly in the leagues I'm in, than you do for throwing because you get more points you get a point per yard when you're running, whereas you get as a 0.4 per yard if you're throwing. So I think Jalen Hurts could be a good QB2 if you're wanting to draft a QB2. And you're wanting to draft a QB2 right at the end when everybody's taking all the other
exactly
the big guys. So let's move on from quarterbacks. What about running backs? Now, obviously, I mentioned Nick Chubb. There. Anyone else? I mean, there's McCaffrey and Kamara and
Jonathan Taylor would be number one for me. I didn't get him, but I mean, Jonathan Taylor, McCaffrey. People are still quite high on Derrick Henry. He's going relatively high in a lot of the mock drafts at the moment. My worry is injury because of the workload that he's had for the past couple of years. You've got Nick Chubb. One that came up in the ATM podcast that we both listened to that I completely agreed with their take was Leonard Fournette. I would not be putting a toe anywhere near him. I just don't think he is the fit anymore. I don't think he's fit enough because obviously he's getting on a little bit in age for the position that he plays. He's not got the workload anymore. Dalvin Cook, I think, could have a good year this year. Alongside Cousins, I think Cousins is maybe settling into that offense a little bit more in Minnesota with Thielen's dropped down. I know we're not into wide receivers yet, but he's dropped down his draft stock a little bit more. Read an article, I think it was today actually, about Saquon Barkley and Dallas, Zeke.
Mm-hmm.
That again, they're going to be getting the carries, but are they really going to be getting fantasy numbers? They might produce, get the third down. Get the first down on third, but are they going to be putting up the yardage numbers that fantasy owners are going to want? I just don't know.
Yeah, there's one more player that I'd throw into that mix, and it's largely because of where he plays. But DeAndre Swift, I think, is a good sleeper pick. He's in Detroit.
Been watching Hard Knocks?
I haven't actually. I've never watched the full season of Hard Knocks yet. I really ought to. But it always gets by other things when it's on.
Episode 2 of Hard Knocks this year that kind of digs in a little bit on DeAndre Swift, and I totally agree with you. For you to say that without watching Hard Knocks kind of backs what they are saying as well.
Do you want to know what's kind of sad? I'm on this weird ergonomic computer chair that Lindsay has, and and I fell asleep on it in the first week of preseason because I specifically targeted watching the Detroit Lions game, largely because I wanted to see how the Detroit Lions were this season. I know that preseason is not real, but in terms of showing you how everybody is, but also just because I wanted to see how is it Calvin Ridley, the quarterback that they drafted, the Falcons drafted to be behind Mariota, how they did.
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to see what he was like because he kind of fascinated me with the write-ups on him, and I wanted to, and he actually ended up throwing this amazing pass to win the game, the last play basically. But just seeing DeAndre Swift for one series, he just looked quite sharp, and I just think he's going to get more and more carries. The offense is going to be better, and I think he could blow up this season. So, I mean, I wouldn't say I would draft him top, but I would certainly consider drafting him in the mid to later rounds if he's available.
Well, I mean, he's certainly top 10 running backs in the league from a fantasy point of view. A lot of people are taking him. A lot of people are taking Aaron Jones and Javonte Williams in Denver. I do expect fairly big things from him this year. Obviously, you got Wilson there now. You've got Cortland Sutton. You've got a couple of other really good receivers, Jerry Jeudy. They're going to be able to spread the ball out, which will then lead to good running opportunities. So I think there could be fairly good numbers coming out of Denver this year.
Cool. Let's move on to wide receivers. Last year I thought it was being really smart, and I drafted Devontae Smith really, really early, thinking he is going to blow up because he used to play stepping at running back and things like that for Alabama.
Yep.
And he had a really slow start to the season, and I kind of almost gave up on him, but I did keep him until the end of the season. But I don't know if he's going to be a candidate that's going to, as they say, make the leap, take a jump forward.
Yep.
But beyond that, wide receivers, I mean, you've got your obvious ones, Cooper Kupp, and I'm trying to think of Devontae Adams.
Well, the thing is, he's got a new quarterback now with Derek Carr. So, but apparently they've got very good chemistry already. The reports coming out of Vegas are very strong. Now, obviously, it's preseason. They're going to be. It's either kind of hit or miss for a lot of people in preseason reports. But there's been a lot of talk of the chemistry that Devontae Adams and Derek Carr have. So yeah, I think that's a strong shout. Anybody else?
Well, I not to come across the total Rams homer, but I do think Robbie Anderson's going to have a big year this year.
With Cooper Kupp?
With Cooper Kupp. I think that he's going to get more single coverage than he's ever got.
Because Kupp's going to be double covered.
I think Kupp's going to draw the double teams, and he's going to be open more. And I also think that with Stafford being around the Rams a lot more, he'll be a bit more confident to spread it a bit more, because last year, whenever the Rams got in trouble, it was Cooper Kupp, with a slight sprinkling of like getting Sonny Michel or someone to just run straight into the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
So I do think that he could have a really big year, certainly bigger than what he had last year in Chicago, but that's not really difficult.
Okay, I mean, you flipping the coin slightly, because you've kind of been asking me for the past couple of rounds, we'll say. Where do you think somebody like Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be this year? New team, new quarterback, and a quarterback that's just lost his main threat as well.
I think he's going to be second in targets after Travis Kelce.
Yep.
Which we'll come on to, no doubt. It's hard to say. I know their rookie's done quite well in preseason as well, for Kansas City. Mahomes played in the last game, and he was sort of spreading it around to various receivers. So I don't know if Schuster's going to have a massive season, especially with Kelce. I think Kelce's now going to be Mahomes' safety net. It used to be Tyreek Hill, but I think Kelce's going to be the one he looks for whenever there's trouble. He's always had that's the one thing I would say about Mahomes that I notice when I watch him. If he isn't sure, he always would find Hill or Kelsey. Now he's only got Kelsey, so
yeah. Well, that's kind of where I was going for it. Will the confidence come to Juju, who it was brought in as the deep threat of Hill? When Hill left, obviously Juju came in going, right, you're going to be my go route runner. He never had the opportunity, I don't think, in Pittsburgh to be that guy, because Ben just didn't have the arm towards the end.
Ben didn't have the arm, and then I might be wrong on this, but he was at one point he was in the shadow of Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
And then I know that he's maybe not in the shadow, but Claypool became a big thing. Then Freiermuth, the tight end, started getting loads of targets. So, and those are just a number of people. I don't think he did have the chances there, but I equally would. I wouldn't bet my house on it or anything like that. I'm not 100% sure this, but I wouldn't be surprised if him and Valdes-Scantling have similar amount of targets this year. And it's Kelsey that's got the most by a good way.
Yeah.
But again, it's maybe like a late round pick. You would pick it for your bench.
Yeah.
And then potentially he blows up and you realise, I'll put him in now. Mind you, that happened to me. Normally I would have someone on the bench to blow up and I put them in the next week and then they would get injured within a quarter or something. So
yep.
After I'd lost the game before. The funniest one that I had was when I'm in a Rams fan group, UK Rams fan group one, and my opponent had Jared Goff as his quarterback because he was a very big Rams fanboy, this guy. And the funniest win I've ever had was I had a terrible week, but Jared Goff, until like the end of the fourth quarter, but just going into the third quarter, Jared Goff had minus points. It's such a bad game. Anyway, and I think I won something like 57-35 or something. It was such a bad week.
Wow.
So wide receivers, do you sort of view the ones that I've kind of brought up as reasonable shouts? I mean,
I genuinely don't think with the maybe like kind of top 25 wide receivers, they're all going to score you points, especially if you're in a points per reception league. You are going to score points with them because there's just so many good receivers in the league at the moment. You've got, obviously, we've kind of covered Kupp, Jefferson. We've not even touched on Jamar Chase. You've got CeeDee Lamb. You've got Stephon Diggs. You've got Keenan Allen. And that's just the top 10. Yeah. That's not even all of the top 10. And you're still going and going and going. One I would definitely, and it's a little bit of bias because of Hard Knocks, Amra St. Brown.
Yeah, I had him last year.
Have an exceptional year this year. It looks like he's going from strength to strength. I'm interested because there are two quote unquote good wide receivers in Denver now. One is going to come out on top at the end of the year. From a fantasy point of view, they're not going to be neck and neck the whole way. You've got Cortland Sutton and you've got Jerry Jeudy. Mm-hmm. One of them is going to have a good year.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people are thinking it's going to be Jerry Jeudy, but there's reports come out this year that Russell Wilson has a bit more chemistry with Cortland Sutton. Mm-hmm. Both receivers are kind of coming off injuries from last year. They both picked up injuries during the season. So it's a bit of a worry pick. Me personally, I picked Jerry Jeudy. That's a fanboy pick. I think he's going to be an exceptional talent. But is it going to be this year? I just don't know. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen with DK Metcalf this year.
Yeah.
He's got Geno Smith and Drew Lock.
Yeah, I had him in my keeper league, and he was one of the ones I kept. But I kept in previous seasons. But this season,
I let him go purely because he doesn't have the quarterback, I don't think, to be, because essentially when you're in a keeper league, your first round goes when you keep someone, and then your second round, your third round. So you're allowed 3 keepers. But to keep DK Metcalf and lose a second round pick, I don't think it's worth it. He'll be available later on if I really want.
I don't think it would be worth it. And if you're talking about a dynasty or a keeper league, I would have thrown him this year. I would. I get why you kept him last year. He had a all right year.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he had Russell Wilson as his quarterback. You've got Geno Smith and you've got Drew Lock this year. I just don't see the production coming.
No, I think I don't see it myself either. And I'd probably, based on what I saw, I know it's preseason, and the 2 series I saw of the Atlanta Falcons game, I'd stay clear of any of the Falcons receivers except maybe Kyle Pitts, just because of how good an athlete he is. Although
Pitts will get open.
Yeah.
It's just a case of whether the quarterback can actually get him the ball.
I know that this is off piece, but I genuinely believe Calvin Ridley is going to play and start a game before week 10. That's my prediction.
It's not a bad shout.
Either because, and I hope this doesn't happen because I never wish this on anyone, either because Mariota is going to run too much and get himself into trouble and get injured, or he's going to play so bad that they just want to see the rookie.
I mean, if Mariota, I'll start that again and try and use English. If Mariota doesn't play well, the fact that you've got a rookie there that is really unknown, the fans will want to see him, if not the front office.
Yeah.
So the coaching staff just won't have an option. He'll get to week 9, week 10, and it'll be like, nah, we need to see where our money's going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. We've actually not talked about, we did mention one of there's not much Bills talk at the moment. Apart from
it's strangely enough, no, but I mean, you could have, I genuinely think you've got the Bills have a top 15 player in all categories.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. So, I mean, you're probably not, if you're unsure, just pick a Bills player. Probably.
If there's any left.
Yeah. Right, okay. So, speaking of Bills players, and moving on, tight end.
Dawson Knox.
I think, is definitely, he's not your premier tight end that you're going to go for.
No, but he is a guy that's going to give you production.
Yeah.
He's not going to be blowing it off the carpet. Where did that come from? Blowing it off the map every single game. But he's a player that might win you a round. Yeah. He'll have that one game where it's quite tight and he'll push you over the top.
Yeah, I mean, I just sort of brought his stats up just now. 587 yards isn't bad for tight ends. I mean, it's not Kelsey numbers. It's not.
Nobody's going to have Kelsey numbers.
But he also had 9 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So, there's 54 points from your season. Depending on how.
Did he not get injured last year?
I think he maybe did.
I think he only played 9 games.
Yeah, I think he also had rushing yards as well, but that's neither here nor there. So, yeah. No, he played 15. He played 15 games last year. It was the year before he missed a bit of the season. So,
right.
But yeah, pretty good tight end in Dawson Knox, I think.
Yep.
And then obviously we've mentioned Kelsey, and it's now bothering me because of San Francisco. Tight ends name.
Kittle.
Sorry,
George Kittle.
Yeah, Kittle. I don't know how that left. That's another one who might have a bounce back year as well.
I've just spotted. I don't want to call you up, but you said Kyle Pitts earlier on as a wide receiver.
No, I said as in terms of receiving for
okay, I'll let you off. I will let you off.
And incidentally, you'll remember the Around the NFL podcast where someone tried to be cute and put Kyle Pitts in as one of the top 5 receivers in your receiver room type thing. And she got called out, and I can't remember who it was, but
did you say she got called out on it?
Yeah, it was a guest. and they put a vote out, and she came last because Kyle Pitts isn't a receiver. Although he's got the hands.
It wasn't Connie Fox, was it?
No, it was like Mina Kimes or a guest.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Just while we're on the subject of San Francisco, I realised that we did miss out Brandon Ayuk as another wide receiver bounce back candidate that you might want.
Potentially, actually, yeah.
But we've done wide receiver, so let's not go back to that again. I just thought I'd mention it. But yeah, I mean, apart from if you can get George Kittle or Kelsey in one of the maybe the third or the fourth round, well, take George Kittle or Kelsey. But Dawson Knox, Kyle Pitts, if he falls a lot, if you are looking, and Freiermuth from Steelers, I think would be a good pick if you're struggling. I think those are good picks.
I couldn't. I won't question you on any of them. I think Schultz in Dallas, he's got potential to have a good season, especially with the potential for Zeke not having a great year again. And when you've got Dak, now I know you've got Mari Cooper and a couple others that we haven't.
Browns now.
Sorry, who am I thinking of?
CeeDee Lamb.
CeeDee Lamb, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
They've got threats downfield, but even if it's just a bump route to the edge or there's potential for point yardage there in Dallas, I think. If Dak's able to see the field like he has in previous years.
Yeah. Right, well, tight ends, I mean, as I say, it's few and far between that you get elite level tight ends. They're getting better, but I think it's not as strong a position to pick from necessarily.
No, but I mean, there are household names out there. You've got your David Njoku. I know it's a Browns player.
Mm-hmm.
Got a Browns player that right this time. Yay. But he's if you even know a little bit about the NFL or even dabble into it, you're going to know the name. You're going to know the name Darren Waller. You're going to know the name Dallas Goedert. There's a lot of Mike Gesicki.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, Tua's going to have to start using the weapons that he's got out in Miami. Gesicki didn't have a great year last year, I don't think, but the year before had a breakout year. So maybe, there was a little blip and he's going to come back strong. If Seattle are going to do anything this year, they're going to have to rely on Noah Fant a lot. I thought that was a good acquisition from that Denver trade. I felt that it was a bit of a loss as a Denver fan. I like Noah Fant. He did make a couple of mistakes, but he got yardage when we needed it, as opposed to when we wanted it.
Yeah.
But on the opposite side of things, it gives Albert, and I'm not going to try and say his second name, Albert O, a potential for a big year, because there's not those two tight ends now. They're going to have to rely, if they're going for a tight end play, it's going to be through Albert O.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see how Noah Fant fares with. I mean, he's probably in an ideal situation with Geno Smith, because Geno Smith is safe to a fault in the sense that he'll dump it off a lot. So, maybe Fant will get more action than potentially he would have got if he stuck around with Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
But moving on to kickers, I think the obvious one, if you can get him, is Justin Tucker.
I was raging. I didn't. I was raging. Missed him by 3 picks.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm taking a kicker this round. I'm taking the top ranked kicker, and nobody would take. I was raging.
Obviously, last year I did quite well because I got Evan McPherson, or McPherson. They were pronouncing it McPherson on all the media, so I kind of accepted what they said. But I got him, and sometimes, despite the fact they got to the Super Bowl, sometimes I found the Bengals team were quite good at getting field goals and not necessarily touchdowns. So
Aye.
And McPherson kicked, I don't know how many game-winning field goals he kicked, but he was some.
It was ridiculous.
He was some player for them. So if you can get McPherson or McPherson, as we would say in Scotland, then get him. And the other one I would also back quite strongly is Matt Gay from the Rams. He again had a lot.
My kicker.
Yeah, he had a lot of last minute game winning field goals as well. But I don't know.
I think the kicking
stands out, or they all much the much.
Oh, I was going to say I think the kicking game's actually coming on. Like, I thought a couple of years ago it was like very, but they're becoming a lot more consistent. I think that might just be a poor take by me. I just feel you've got Tucker, you've got McPherson, you've got Harrison Butker in Kansas City. Obviously, you got it's Matt Gay, isn't it? Not Mark.
It's Matt Gay, yeah.
Matt, yeah. Nick Folk in New England had a bit of a dip year last year. He missed a couple of big kicks, but he seems quite consistent. Tyler Bass in Buffalo, McManus in Denver. Now he's no Matt Prater, but he's definitely somebody you can rely on.
Mm-hmm.
Prater's a little bit older now. You've got Blankenship, you've got Graham Gano, Robbie Gould. There's a lot of now. There may be a household to us because of Dan Hanzus from the ATM podcast having his kicker club. He draws that into conversation. So you and I might be quite familiar with the names that we're brandishing about at the moment, whereas others, especially more casual fans, might not. But I mean, there's probably 9 or 10 kickers I've just named. Now, fair enough, I had them in front of me, but it's still names that I recognise going, okay, I can put him to a team. I know what team he's on. Or he was there and now he's moved. Having somebody that you can go, I recognise that name, which means he's either absolute horse manure or he's done something.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is the old faux pas that you remember the players who have some of the worst plays or the dinks off the bar or whatever, but
or the double doinks,
all that sort of stuff. I mean, in terms of Blankenship, I love Blankenship just because of the look.
He's brilliant.
And he's a great kicker, but he reminds me, and this is a little bit kind of, I suppose, self-indulgent, but he reminds me a little bit of the kicker version of Colin Stewart that we used to play ice hockey with, just with those goggles on. There's a guy who played ice hockey with goggles on because he couldn't wear contacts.
Oh, Rambo, that's terrible.
But I think it's excellent that how good he is a kicker. So good for him. But I still think if he's there, I'm picking McPherson first. Over, except obviously if Tucker's there, because Tucker's, I mean, they do talk about on the ATN quite a lot, or Dan Hanzus does. Tucker is a Hall of Famer.
No question.
Yeah.
He's the only one on that list at the moment that I would go put him in.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, I don't want to drag the pod out too long talking about kickers, because that is really ATN's remit, and we'll leave them with it. Defenses this year. Bills probably. Rams probably. Pittsburgh are always a good defense. And I think
the thing is, on the list that I've got in front of me that I have been referring to and through my draft process as well as for the pod, the Steelers are only 12th.
There you go.
And this is from rankings from fantasy writers. It's the ESPN one I've been using. Steelers only 12th. You got Bills 1, Bucks 2, Saints 3, Packers 4, Colts 5, 49ers 6.
Is that based on people picking them, or is that based on like PFF scores, or?
It's the writers picking their number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and then it obviously it goes to the average on the side, saying, so for the wide receivers, or we'll go back to the kickers. Carabell had Tucker number 4. What is he on? Yates had him 1. Cockcroft had him 1. So he's got an average of 1.6. The one with the lowest average goes to the top.
Yeah.
So your Cowboys had an average of 8th during their picks, but they actually came out as the 7th overall.
Right. Okay.
There's what, five writers that have all put their picks in for ESPN.
Yeah.
I just like because we use the ESPN app, so I like using their writers because it's all the same point. Average draft position and things like that.
Yeah. You find the one you like and you stick with it. I mean, I tend to just when I was doing draft rankings, I tend to look at the same people all the time, Bucky Brooks and that, and
good old Bucky.
Yeah, and that ilk. I don't know. I can't argue with writers who that's their life.
You can.
I do think when someone puts Justin Tucker 4th, you probably can.
It's my point.
I do think that. I also think with the defenses, you know how we do it. You've also got to rank them up against their offense. Because, for example, the Detroit Lions this year, I think, are going to have a pretty good defense. But how many times are they going to have short fields because of their offense, potentially? And
it's a point I actually wanted to bring up. So I feel like I'm second to the party, but I'm glad you did.
Like, the Bills, for example, you could say their defense isn't going to be with top 5, but they might not have to be because they might not be on the field that much.
Exactly. Or if they are on the field, they're going to come in with better field position. So they might give up 3 as opposed to 7. If the ball's starting on the halfway line, there's a better chance of it being 7 or even 8 points, rather than if the Bills have marched it down the field and then had to punt. They've got the ball to the halfway line, but then punted. The ball's going to be on the 2 or the 3 yard line, hopefully. That's then got to be a 97, 98, 99 yard drive.
Yeah.
For points to be converted, as opposed to maybe a 50, 60, 20 yard. If some, I don't know if the Geno Smith kind of get the ball at his own half. I don't mean to lump on Geno. I just, a little bit background. The guy, there's Stuart that I used to work with he and I have shared an account. I shouldn't be saying this, but shared an account for Game Pass. He's a Seahawks fan. I'm a Denver fan. I've loved this offseason and he has hated it.
Yeah, but he probably loves that Super Bowl more than you do. So,
which one?
Swings and roundabouts, isn't it?
Which Super Bowl are we talking about? Because
the one where the most famous photo is Peyton Manning looking over his shoulder.
Oh, was that the Super Bowl that they threw when they should have run at the 2 yard line?
No, that was again.
I'm joking, I know, because we've both got one.
Yeah.
Recently, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, defenses. I think way up with the offense is the way I see it. I mean, I do genuinely think that the Detroit Lions potentially have more sacks this year than they had last year and be a better defense. But do I think I trust their offense enough to not put them in really rubbish positions quite a lot? No, it's the answer to that. It's the same with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Until I see it, and I don't think that want to pile it on their offense. They had a terrible coach last year, the Jacksonville Jaguars, but I want to see it from them before I believe it in terms of their offense is improving and what have you. Yeah. And their defense might be tasty, but I don't trust it to not be in bad positions. So
I agree. I mean, I took the Chargers defense. There wasn't a lot of them left, but I took it because of the field position argument. I think Herbert's going to get them in decent position a lot more than poor position, so there might be yards given up, but hopefully there'll be less points.
Yeah.
I say that as a Broncos fan, that division is absolutely stacked this year.
Yeah. That's well, it's interesting you're saying that about them. The Chargers, of course, have also had an extra year with Brandon Staley coaching them, who we saw what he done with the Rams defense, and that's why he got that job essentially.
Yeah.
I know this is bold, but I could see them winning a playoff game this year, which I know is shocking to everyone.
Well, I agree with that. I can see them winning a playoff game, but I can also see them not making the playoffs.
That division's ridiculous. It's the AFC West is the hardest division in football, in my opinion. And I could see them winning it, but I could also see them coming fourth. And
yes, I could say that for all the teams. I mean, I don't think Kansas City will come. I don't think they will come fourth, but they could if they don't have a good year. You've got Vegas, you've got Denver, and you've got the Chargers all banging down the door now.
Yeah.
I mean, last year, Denver was a bit of a joke, but the Chargers were stepping forward and Derek Carr was moving into a better position. Vegas have now, for some reason, started to get their act together a little bit. And I know we're slightly digressing from what we were talking about, but any team could either win or plummet that division this year. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, it sounds like we've talked about our fantasy picks. You've talked about getting the Chargers. I think if the Bills are about, I'm going to grab the Bills. And we've talked about why
if they were about, I would have had them.
Yeah. Now, just quickly before we go on to the who we think is going to be in the Super Bowl and who we think is going to win the Super Bowl, I'm declaring it now for anyone that's watching. My new sort of darling team, who is not the team I support, but my darling team, is in fact the Detroit Lions. I'm kind of falling in love with them a little bit. I've not even watched Hard Knocks, but I just want them to do well. There's something about them I just feel they need to do well. So that's my team this year. Anyway, Super Bowl picks, Kenny. Who have we got in the Super Bowl?
I can't see anybody except the Bills, and I know it's an easy choice.
That's fair.
It is such an easy choice to make. It feels like I'm cheating.
Yeah.
But they are the team to beat this year. They just are.
Yeah. Well, the Bills in the Super Bowl. Who would you think might make it from the NFC?
For that, I feel there's a lot of potentials, but nobody that's really standing out. I think you know that side of the league a little bit more than I do. Just what the teams that we support, we obviously look at different sides. Who have you got?
Well, it's a tough question. I mean, I do think the Rams could find themselves back there, but it's very, very hard to do that twice. Strangely, I'm kind of thinking that it's going to be someone like a Green Bay this year, maybe Tampa, one of those two, and maybe those are the ones I would say are the more favourite teams at the moment. I think that the 49ers will be good this year in that division, but I just don't trust them with the first year with a sophomore quarterback. And obviously, I think Seattle they're out of it. I think Arizona's too dysfunctional. The Cowboys are choke artists. I'm sorry to say it. Maybe the Eagles would be a sort of a bolter. But
Connie Fox will love you for that.
Yeah, I think the Eagles could be a bolter. There's a feeling behind about them, about the way they play. But yeah, I think you could see like a Green Bay, Tampa, maybe Rams, and possibly, as I say, the Eagles being that bolter. I just don't think Dallas will manage to not choke, and I think they've got a pretty good roster. But in the AFC, apart from the Bills,
the other team that I could see doing it, the other team that I could see doing it is in fact the Chargers in terms of talent level alone. But I don't. The problem is that it's a mental thing for them. How are they going to get over that? But the AFC is. I mean, this is the great thing about the NFL at the moment. The NFL is not a totally predictable product.
No.
Even Indianapolis, they've got a pretty good roster. They've got Matt Ryan, who can sort of game manage.
I mean, he's a competent quarterback. He's been around the league long enough that he with the right roster around them and all firing, there's no reason why they couldn't. Do I think it's going to happen? No. But if, like Philly a couple of years ago, if the stars aligned for them, I could see them going on a run. I could see the Chargers, yes. A team that's annoying me this year that I've got absolutely no idea where I want to put them is the Ravens. Not a clue.
Yeah, me neither. It's funny, we've not really talked much about the Ravens. I think
they've got a really good roster.
Good roster.
I just don't know what to do with them.
And Harbaugh's he's a great coach. There's no getting away from it. And Lamar Jackson he's on a contract year. He's in a weird position where he's essentially doing what Kirk Cousins done.
Yeah.
And he'll be franchise tag, which will make him a fortune. If
he has a good year, then the next contract will come and it'll be through the roof.
Yeah.
There was one other one I wanted to ask you about, which was Washington. Now, obviously, I appreciate that's kind of maybe a little bit further down the pecking order. What are you making of the Commanders this year?
From what I understand,
the straight face. Come on now, professional.
Well, first and foremost, people should know that back when I first got in NFL, I kind of followed the Commanders under their old name.
The football team.
Know at that time, because you might remember this, you might know this or not know this, but when I grew up, there was a team, the under-12s ice hockey team in Kirkcaldy, named the same as the Washington team used to be named. I largely support them because I loved Robert Griffin III coming out of college. And then I kind of gradually just fell out of love with them because I wasn't really a mad NFL fan. I was an NFL fan, but I didn't have a team. And the reason I kind of eventually decided the Rams are my team is because they were the first team that my grandfather met the cheerleaders off, and that was his dream. So they made his dream come true. So that's a nice
story.
Anyway, that's a whole side story. The Commanders this year, I don't think are going to take command. I think is the long and the short of it.
Well done.
I don't think Carson Wentz
is a good quarterback.
Carson Wentz should have went to the bench a long time ago and become a backup. I don't think he's a starter in this league. I think they're going to wish they traded for Jimmy G instead of Carson Wentz. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yep.
Because I don't think they've got a terrible roster. I just don't think they've got a calm, cool presence at quarterback that can even, who might make some mistake. I think he's erratic, and I don't think they're going to do well because of that.
Yeah. I mean, two players that we haven't actually mentioned through fantasy that I think could have good years, fantasy-wise, would be J.D. McKissick and Terry McLaurin. But that all comes back to exactly what you've just said.
Yeah. I don't know. They were saying that he was inaccurate before pads, and he was inaccurate unopposed. So how's he going to cope when he's got, big monsters breathing down his neck trying to sack him?
Exactly.
And in fact, my understanding is at one point, Montez Sweat was chasing him at training, telling him to run into to throw the ball away as he was chasing him because it was training.
Yeah.
And he essentially ran out of play. And so that would have obviously been a sack for Montez Sweat, but Montez Sweat was trying to coach him as he was doing the drill.
Yep.
So no, I just can't see
I just can't see them finishing any. I think maybe I honestly think they might not be the first overall pick, but I think they'll be somewhere in the region of 5 wins this year. And it would surprise me if they get any more than that. I think at one point they will upset the Cowboys. They'll take a game off the Giants and they'll win a couple other games. But I don't think they're gonna be anywhere near the top of that division.
No.
Yeah. I don't know why you brought them up either.
It's just I think maybe it's obviously with the change of name this year, there's been talk about them, but I've not heard really anything positive.
Yeah, well, I will give.
So it's more to get your take on that as like,
yeah,
from somebody who maybe does know more than I do, but also dips into random teams now and again, as you like to do.
Yeah.
If that was one of the teams that you dipped into.
Yeah, well, it was, and I'll tell you, I will give him one bit of credit. The black jersey is very cool.
Yeah, no, that is quite nice.
So there you go. There's a piece of positivity if you're a Washington fan. I mean, you probably turned off during that escapade before it if you are a Washington fan.
Probably.
So, Kenny, just before we wrap up, because this is certainly going to be the longest podcast I've recorded out of the two I've done so far.
It's not like us to ramble.
No. Just give everyone a little bit of a background of Collins Wellness and Coaching, your company and what it does and how you can help people.
So I own Collins Wellness and Coaching. There are two facets to the company. There is the coaching side of it. As you can kind of see from my emblems round, I'm either sponsor or help to coach a number of different teams. A team close to your heart. We've got the Steel Queens, who I help to sponsor their training costs and have been their goalie coach for a couple of years. Not recently, but that's due to other kind of commitments, work and such. I was also a coach and the off-ice conditioning facilitator for Colin Grubb's goalie camp this year, have been for the past 2 years. He comes across and does a goalie camp in Dumfries once a year. For me, it's the best goalie camp in Britain. As well as now I've got an agreement with the Kirkcaldy Ice Hockey Club junior goalies, their junior development system. Their goalies, I'm now going to be their off-ice conditioning coach for the next upcoming season, as well as sponsoring a couple of individual players for the Swifts and the Kestrels. So that's kind of the coaching side of it. I do training programs. I do one-to-one personal training, as well as just released a brand new stretching, 16-week basic stretching and flexibility program, which is available via my Instagram page, which is @Collins Wellness. The other side of my business is the wellness side, which can also come from things like stretching, yoga, etc. But from a nutrition side, I work very closely with a company called Herbalife, who are the #1 brand globally for meal replacements and protein solutions. So I work with them. I'm a distributor supervisor for them, which helps a lot of people with their fitness goals, but also with their wellness and weight loss or weight management or weight gain goals and achievements and daily habits and lifestyle.
Cool. And the Swifts, is that the Inverkeithing non-league team, or have I got that wrong?
Yes, Inverkeithing, they train and play out of the Dalgety Bay Leisure Centre.
All right, so they're in Dalgety Bay rather than Inverkeithing.
Yeah, so they're the Inverkeithing Swifts, but they play their home games in Dalgety Bay, which is quite obviously with my other line of work. I manage a pub within the bay, so they're quite close to me, and what the player that I'm actually sponsoring is actually an ex-member of staff for us as well. So I help to facilitate his training costs and shirt sponsorship for this year.
Cool. Well, one of the things I've been getting into, I don't know if you've been following the page or the Twitter, but is going to some non-league games. It's cheaper to get in, and quite frankly, there's less songs that do my head in. Nothing against football fans; they love singing. I just sometimes they drone because I've got funny.
That's exactly what it is, yeah.
Yeah, I've been going to that. So I've seen Broxburn Athletic a couple of times, and I went to see Livingston United. So maybe I'll get across and catch the Swifts in action at some point and see that as well. So Kenny, it's been great to chat to you. I think, as I say, we did have that Podbean episode that didn't quite make it anywhere, but hopefully this one everyone's enjoyed. As I say, if you want to leave a comment, good or bad, please do so. But as I say, it's only my third podcast, so please don't give me 1-star reviews at the moment.
Well, they might with me as a guest.
Yeah. If you're going to give one-star review, at least say, it's all Kenny, don't have him back on.
Thanks.
And then we'll hopefully catch you guys down the line. And I'll be back next week at some point or later on in the week with my review of Festival 2022. So thank you.